sisters and brothers of America.
Have you ever wondered what connects the timeless wisdom of the Buddha, who lived over 2,500 years ago, to the fiery words of Swami Vivekananda, the man who reawakened India's soul in the modern age? What happens when the serene meditations of the Buddha meet the passionate call to action of Vivekananda? Buddha, the enlightened one, showed humanity how to overcome suffering and live a life of compassion and truth. Centuries later, Swami Vivekananda, a monk with a lion's spirit, carried that light forward, redefining it for a world on the brink of modernity. But here's the deeper question. How did Buddha's teachings shape Swami Vivekananda's philosophy? Why did Vivekananda, who called himself a Vedantin, hold Buddha in such high regard? And how did he reinterpret Buddhism to address the challenges of his own time? Stay with us at the School of Buddha as we explore this fascinating confluence of two extraordinary spiritual giants: Buddha, the embodiment of compassion, and Vivekananda, the harbinger of action. In this journey, we will uncover how Buddhism influenced Vivekananda's vision for humanity and how he brought Buddha's eternal truths into the context of modern life. Let's begin. To understand Vivekananda's connection to Buddha, we must first dive into the essence of Buddhism itself, a philosophy and way of life that has transformed millions of lives. Over 2,500 years ago, a young prince named Siddhartha Gautama abandoned his life of luxury. Haunted by the stark realities of old age, sickness, and death, he set out on a relentless quest to find the root of human suffering. And after years of asceticism and meditation, he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, becoming the Buddha, the awakened one. At the heart of Buddhism lie the Four Noble Truths, a profound yet simple framework that addresses suffering. It talks about the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path to the cessation of suffering known as the Eightfold Path. It is a practical roadmap, encompasses right understanding, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. It is a balanced approach that combines wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline. Imagine a life where you are no longer enslaved by endless desires, where your mind is free and your actions stem from compassion for all beings. This is the vision Buddha offered to humanity. The key values in Buddhism are compassion or karuna, which teaches an all-encompassing love for all beings; mindfulness or sati, which means a deep awareness of the present moment; non-attachment or anicca, that is freedom from clinging to material or emotional experiences. Think about it. Don't we all struggle with anxiety, overthinking, and the constant chase for more? Buddha's teachings remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Now, fast forward to the th century, when Swami Vivekananda emerged as a spiritual giant in a colonized India, striving to reclaim its identity. Amid his call to action, he turned to Buddha as one of the greatest reformers the world had ever seen. But what exactly did Vivekananda see in Buddha's teachings that inspired him so deeply? How did he make them a part of his own spiritual message? Let's explore. Picture a young monk with fiery eyes standing on a stage in Chicago in 1893. He begins his speech with the iconic words, "Sisters and brothers of America." This was Swami Vivekananda, electrifying the audience at the Parliament of the world's religions. But what many don't know is that his spiritual vision was deeply inspired by one of India's greatest sons, Gautama Buddha. Swami Vivekananda once said, "Buddhism is the fulfillment of Hinduism." He saw Buddha as a towering figure who transformed Indian spirituality by giving it a new direction, one of compassion, rationality, and universal love. But this wasn't mere admiration. Vivekananda felt a profound spiritual connection with Buddha. He referred to Buddha as the greatest teacher of humanity, a man who epitomized selflessness and fearlessness. In Buddha's teachings, Vivekananda found the perfect blend of wisdom and action, two pillars he built his own philosophy upon. One of the things that struck Vivekananda most about Buddha was his fearless challenge to social inequality. At a time when rigid caste systems and rituals dominated Indian society, Buddha preached a revolutionary message that liberation was available to everyone, regardless of caste, gender, or status. This resonated deeply with Vivekananda. In his own time, he fought against caste oppression and called for the upliftment of the downtrodden. Buddha's teachings became a moral compass for Vivekananda as he envisioned a new India, one rooted in equality and compassion. But how Buddhism shaped his mission? Vivekananda's mission to serve the poor and oppressed. What he called Daridra Narayana, or seeing God in the poor, was inspired by Buddha's path of compassion. He believed that true spirituality meant helping others, just as Buddha dedicated his life to alleviating human suffering. Another lesson Vivekananda drew from Buddha was universalism. Buddha transcended the boundaries of religion, emphasizing the unity of all humanity. Similarly, Vivekananda saw all religions as paths leading to the same ultimate truth. This idea became central to his message to the world. Perhaps most importantly, Vivekananda admired Buddha's rational, no-nonsense approach to spirituality. Buddha taught people to rely on their own efforts, not on dogma or blind faith. Vivekananda took this idea forward, calling on people to rise above superstition and focus on personal growth and self-realization. While Vivekananda deeply admired Buddhism, he wasn't uncritical. He believed that Buddha's original teachings were unparalleled, but later interpretations of Buddhism had some limitations. So, how did Vivekananda reinterpret Buddhism to make it more relevant to his own time? Vivekananda often said that Buddha's teachings were an extension of the Vedantic philosophy found in Hinduism. He believed that Buddha's ideas of non-attachment and selflessness were already rooted in the Upanishads. But what Buddha did was make these teachings accessible and practical for everyone. Vivekananda synthesized the two traditions, combining Buddha's compassion with the Vedantic idea of the ultimate oneness of all beings. This is why he called Buddhism the fulfillment of Hinduism. It was not separate, but a continuation of the same spiritual quest. However, Vivekananda was critical of how Buddhism evolved after Buddha's time. He felt that, in focusing too much on monastic life and renunciation, later Buddhists distanced themselves from society. In his own words, Buddhism, with all its glory, became the religion of a monastery, and India was left to the mercies of other forces. He believed that spirituality must serve society, not retreat from it. Vivekananda reimagined Buddhism for his era. He took Buddha's principles of compassion, equality, and self-discipline, and infused them with his call to action. He believed that a monk's duty wasn't just meditation but service to humanity, a modern reinterpretation of the bodhisattva ideal. Finally, when Vivekananda introduced Indian spirituality to the West, he often spoke of Buddha as India's greatest gift to the world. He described Buddhism as a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern rationality, a philosophy that could address the needs of a rapidly changing world. Through his deep reverence and reinterpretation of Buddhist teachings, Swami Vivekananda created a vision that combined inner growth with outer action, a philosophy that remains as powerful today as it was in his time. But what were the exact teachings of Vivekananda that reflected Buddha's influence, and how can they inspire us today? Before going to this aspect of his teachings, let's have a critical reflection of Vivekananda's interpretation of Buddhism first. Swami Vivekananda, as a central figure in the Neo-Vedantic movement, sought to reinterpret Indian religious traditions in the context of modernity and colonialism. While he expressed deep respect for Gautama Buddha and acknowledged the transformative impact of Buddhism on Indian and world spirituality, his engagement with Buddhism was not devoid of criticism. Scholars have highlighted several key aspects of his critique, which were influenced by both philosophical concerns and socio-political motivations. One of the most debated aspects of Vivekananda's interpretation is his assertion that Buddhism is essentially a branch of Hinduism. He often described Buddhism as the fulfillment of Vedic thought, emphasizing its continuity with Hindu philosophy rather than its distinctiveness. Critics argue that this perspective downplays the revolutionary nature of Buddhism, particularly its rejection of the caste system and the authority of the Vedas. Prominent scholars such as B.R. Ambedkar challenge this view, emphasizing Buddhism's departure from Hindu orthodoxy. They contend that Vivekananda's portrayal might have been influenced by his desire to create a unified Indian identity in the face of colonial rule, which required portraying Indian spiritual traditions as harmonious and interconnected. One of the core critiques Vivekananda offered was based on the ontological differences between Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism. According to Vivekananda, the denial of a permanent self or anatta in Buddhism contrasts with the Vedantic concept of Brahman, the ultimate, unchanging reality underlying all existence. Vivekananda believed that Buddhism's rejection of a transcendental self leads to what he perceived as philosophical nihilism. He argued that while Buddha's ethical teachings were unparalleled, the lack of an affirmative metaphysical foundation in later Buddhism weakened its philosophical strength. In his lecture, Buddhism, the Fulfillment of Hinduism, Vivekananda stated, "Buddha came not to destroy but to fulfill. He was the logical outcome of the religious development of India. The fulfillment, not the destruction of the Vedas, was what he taught." This statement reflects Vivekananda's attempt to situate Buddhism as an offshoot of Vedic tradition rather than an independent religion with its own metaphysical claims. Scholars like Wilhelm Halbfass have critiqued this approach, arguing that it reduces Buddhism's philosophical uniqueness and frames it as a subordinate tradition to Vedanta. Additionally, Vivekananda's assertion that Buddhism lacked a positive conception of ultimate reality has been contested by scholars of Buddhism. They point out that Mahayana Buddhism, particularly through the doctrine of sunyata or emptiness articulated by Nagarjuna, presents a sophisticated metaphysical framework that avoids both eternalism and nihilism. Critics argue that Vivekananda's interpretation of sunyata as nihilism oversimplifies Buddhist metaphysics and fails to engage with its philosophical depth. Vivekananda also criticized the monastic focus of Buddhism, suggesting that its emphasis on renunciation and monastic withdrawal from worldly life contributed to India's socio-political decline. He claimed that while Buddha himself was a great reformer, later Buddhist monasticism became overly insular, leading to a neglect of societal responsibilities. This critique can be seen in his assertion where he said, "The national life of India sank in the Buddhist period. The Buddhists did not think of resisting foreign invasion. They were too busy in monasteries." Scholars like Torkel Brecke have noted that Vivekananda's critique of Buddhist monasticism was shaped by his own agenda of promoting a socially engaged Hinduism. Brecke argues that Vivekananda sought to revive Hinduism as a dynamic, worldly force capable of addressing modern social and national issues, contrasting it with what he saw as the withdrawal-oriented nature of Buddhism. However, this critique has been challenged by historians who argue that Buddhist monasticism, particularly during the early centuries of the Common Era, was far from socially disengaged. Monasteries often served as centers of learning, culture, and economic activity. Further, scholars have pointed out that Vivekananda's framing of Buddhism as socially disengaged ignores the rich tradition of bodhisattva ethics in Mahayana Buddhism, which emphasizes compassion and service to all sentient beings. Vivekananda's critique of Buddhism must also be understood within the socio-political context of late 19th century colonial India. As a Hindu reformer, Vivekananda aimed to present Hinduism as a unified and robust tradition capable of withstanding Western criticism. His emphasis on Vedanta as the pinnacle of Indian spirituality can be seen as part of this broader project of reasserting Indian cultural identity. Scholars like Andrew Nicholson have argued that Vivekananda's portrayal of Buddhism as an offshoot of Vedanta served to strengthen the claim that Hinduism is the foundational tradition of Indian spirituality. This approach, while effective in promoting a cohesive Hindu identity, has been critiqued for downplaying the distinctiveness of Buddhist thought and its historical contributions. Another critique leveled against Vivekananda's interpretation of Buddhism is that it reflects a selective reading of history and philosophy. Scholars have pointed out that while Vivekananda acknowledged the ethical contributions of Buddhism, he largely ignored or downplayed its philosophical advancements, particularly in logic and epistemology, as developed by Buddhist scholars like Dignaga and Dharmakirti. By framing Buddhism primarily as an ethical reform movement, he overlooked its rich intellectual tradition. Further, Vivekananda's view that Buddhism declined due to its focus on renunciation has been questioned by modern historians, who attribute the decline of Buddhism in India to a complex interplay of political, economic, and social factors, including invasions and the patronage shifts towards Hinduism during the medieval period. While Swami Vivekananda's engagement with Buddhism reflects a genuine respect for its ethical teachings, his critiques reveal a Vedanta-centric approach aimed at promoting Hindu revivalism. Scholars have noted that his portrayal of Buddhism as a derivative of Hinduism, coupled with his philosophical and social critiques, was shaped by his broader agenda of constructing a unified Hindu identity in response to colonial pressures. But we should remember that Vivekananda's efforts to synthesize the ethical ideals of Buddhism with the metaphysical framework of Vedanta have had a lasting impact on modern Indian spirituality. His vision of a socially engaged spirituality continues to inspire contemporary movements aimed at combining personal enlightenment with social service. Now, let's delve into the key teachings of Vivekananda, inspired by Buddha. What happens when the stillness of Buddha's meditation meets the dynamism of Vivekananda's call to action? The result is a powerful philosophy that inspires both inner transformation and outer change. Let's explore how Swami Vivekananda carried forward the essence of Buddha's teachings and made them his own. 1. Compassion and selfless service. At the heart of Buddha's teachings lies an unshakable compassion for all beings. Buddha didn't preach from a throne, he walked among the suffering, offering solace and solutions. Similarly, Vivekananda's philosophy was rooted in the idea of selfless service. He famously said, "They alone live who live for others." For Vivekananda, serving the poor and oppressed wasn't charity, it was worship. He called this Daridra Narayana, or seeing God in the poor. Like Buddha, he believed that true spirituality isn't about rituals or renunciation, but about making a difference in the lives of others. 2. Overcoming suffering through inner strength. Buddha taught that suffering stems from ignorance, attachment, and desire. The way out, he said, was to cultivate wisdom and discipline through the Eightfold Path. Vivekananda echoed this message in his own way, urging people to conquer the chains of attachment and rise above their limitations. He said, "The greatest sin is to think that you are weak." For Vivekananda, the fight against suffering wasn't just a spiritual struggle, it was also a battle against self-doubt. He believed, like Buddha, that liberation begins with the mind, and that every human being has the strength to overcome suffering. 3. The path of fearlessness. Imagine Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, unmoved even by the temptations and fears sent by Mara. This image of fearlessness inspired Vivekananda, who often spoke of courage as the cornerstone of spiritual life. He declared, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." Like Buddha, Vivekananda taught that fear and doubt are illusions that must be overcome through knowledge and self-awareness. His teachings called on people to face life's challenges head-on, with the same unwavering resolve that Buddha embodied during his enlightenment. 4. Universal love and oneness. Both Buddha and Vivekananda saw humanity as one family. Buddha's compassion extended to all beings, breaking barriers of caste, creed, and nationality. Vivekananda carried this idea forward, advocating for universal love and harmony. He often emphasized that all religions lead to the same ultimate truth, a principle rooted in Buddha's teachings of inclusivity and tolerance. Through his speeches and writings, Vivekananda became a bridge between cultures, showing the world that the message of Buddha and Vedanta was universal. Through these teachings, Vivekananda didn't just honor Buddha, he brought his timeless wisdom into the modern age, inspiring people to lead lives of purpose, strength, and compassion. Buddha and Swami Vivekananda were two lights that shone centuries apart but illuminated the same eternal truths. Buddha taught humanity how to overcome suffering, live mindfully, and cultivate compassion. Centuries later, Vivekananda took these principles and infused them with new energy, making them relevant to a world grappling with modern challenges. But what makes their legacy so timeless? It is their shared belief in the boundless potential of the human spirit. Buddha showed us that liberation is possible through self-discipline and wisdom. Vivekananda, inspired by Buddha, showed us that this liberation must also lead to action that uplifts society and serves humanity. As we reflect on the lives of these great teachers, one truth becomes clear. Their teachings are not confined to the past. They are a call to all of us, here and now, to awaken to our own strength, to serve others, and to build a world rooted in compassion and unity. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and comment below your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your fellow youth who aspire to change the world through their mindfulness and compassionate actions. I'll leave you with Vivekananda's own words about Buddha, which is, Buddha was the first human being who dared to say, "I will not look to any god, nor will I look to any prophet. Let me see what is in me." May we too find the courage to awaken the Buddha within us and bring light to the world,